Hello to all. Thank you for being here today. Welcome to Tally CA Connect. So our today's topic of discussion that is TDS and TallyPrime, and as you can see on your screen, which Amit sir is going to achieve, that TDS is no longer TDS if we use TallyPrime. So today we will discuss the TDS process with expert tips, and that will help you navigate TDS in your system with accuracy. So our expert for today is CA Amit Vaishampayan. Amit sir is a practicing CA and he is also a regular faculty at ICI for training sessions. He has helped many big corporates with the system implementation. Amit sir is a Tally evangelist and today he has taken out time from his very busy schedule to help us take a session at our CA Connect. So definitely let's make the most out of this session. Let's put in the queries in the Q&A box so that as and when sir finishes his one particular module or one of the features, we can take the queries and then move on. So that will help us keep a track. Please do not raise your hands until the session is over. Then once Amit sir's portion is over, we can take the questions from raised hands as well. Yeah, thank you, Amit sir, for being here today. Over to you.
Okay, thanks a lot, madam. Let me just start with this session. I think if you all of you have seen my face, then I can put my camera off. Let me first begin with why this session and what is the importance of this session. Let me just show you some figures. I'm sure all of you are aware about these figures, maybe better than what I know them. This is our favorite income tax site. These are the number of individual registered users, 12 crore an odd number. As of today, some 50 lakh number of returns filed and 47 lakh processed. Okay, now having said that, there is some firms like this Oxfam and some of these people who say India is a poor country. I just wish to share some of the data with you. This is the data of National Stock Exchange. National Stock Exchange on 5th of June handled 1,971 crore number of orders in the time frame of 6 hours and 15 minutes. They probably handled what they call it as sauda. Number of saudas is 1,971 crore number of saudas is what is done. And who are the people who have done it? These are the 28.55 crore number of traders. Going back to this number of individual registered users, it's only 12 crores, and the number of traders who traded on National Stock Exchange is 28.55 crores. Even if you discount it that 50% of the people are non-individuals, 50% still becomes individuals who ultimately will have to file the returns. So you can very easily assume that this number will go up by a crore or so, crore or plus. So the idea is that if the number of individual returns ITRs are going to go up by a crore or so, then naturally even the TDS return filing will also go up. I'm assuming all of you are from my similar profession. I don't trade on National Stock Exchange, though there are good people and intelligent people who do that. I am still fighting with my hygiene requirements of earning my food, clothing, and shelter. So I assume that all those people have satisfied their basic necessities of hygiene requirements, food, clothing, and shelter, and then satisfying their necessary requirements of giving education to their kids, and then giving the essential requirements of doing some yoga or exercise for their life, and then they can go to a desirable activity called trading on National Stock Exchange. So we can easily assume there are some 14 crore, 15 crore people who are traders and who can afford to trade, and they desire, and not only desire, they actually trade. So those many number of people will have to ultimately file their returns because their transactions will get recorded. 1,971 crore number of transactions to be handled within a span of 6 hours and 15 minutes. We can visualize how robust that system would be, right? So the kind of system that we are having, probably this is the highest world record of those many number of transactions that we have handled. Coming back to our topic, so TDS returns. So I assume all of you either are working in some company where you are required to file TDS returns, or you're a chartered accountant or accountant like me who have to help people to file returns. The advantage with TDS return is just that in case of income tax return, your customer, like in my case, the customer comes to me only once in a year. In case of a TDS return, he has to come to me at least 4 times. And fortunately for me, there are two types of TDS returns. One is salary TDS and one is other than salary TDS. So 8 returns. So 8 times activity hoga, 8 times billing hoga, 8 times paisa aega. So this is how the activity goes. Another advantage from chartered accountants practice perspective. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Perfectly fine.
fine. Another advantage, as I look at it from chartered accountants perspective, is that there is no certification as far as TDS returns are concerned. TDS return is more of a compliance activity. So अच्छा हुआ तुम्हारा, बुरा हुआ तुम्हारा, सर्टिफिकेशन करने में जो रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी आ जाता है ट्रांसफर होके, वो नहीं आता है. So instead of one time you get paid 4 times, you have no responsibility technically. You're just working for the company or for the entity for which you're filing TDS returns, and your job is still done. So to that extent, I believe this is a very good system. So one of the intention for me to conduct this session is that कि मेरे को थोड़ा बहुत और धंधा भी मिलेगा आप लोगों से. आप लोग सब लोग उसी फील्ड में होंगे ऐसा मैं अज्यूम करता हूँ. अगर 1 करोड़, 1.5 करोड़, 2 करोड़ नंबर ऑफ ITRs बढ़ेंगे तो आई एम श्योर एटलीस्ट 1 लाख TDS returns will increase, and I'm sure that is the kind of potential that we have in our country. So if those TDS returns will increase, I believe I will also get a part of that cake. Coming back to this session of ours, TDS, not TDS issue, Tally. So there are enough and more number of softwares available in the market, but probably I believe Tally is the only software which also has an accounting backup. There may be another softwares. I'm not very well versed with those softwares like Zoho or uh, Busy or other softwares, how good they are as far as TDS returns are concerned. But what I know of is that Tally is almost there now. At least last 10 years, whenever we talk about Tally, we don't have to explain what is Tally to anyone. Not only in India, it is even internationally. Everyone knows what Tally is and how Tally operates. They only have the questions like whether Tally is available on web, the Tally is a web-based software or on-premise software, and specific features of Tally. So selling of Tally is out of question. What is required to be sold now is the features of Tally. So currently we're talking about this feature of Tally, of TDS in Tally. So coming back to our topic, if you understand Tally and to what extent you understand Tally is what will help you in terms of doing this activity. Though I am advocating and I'm trying to explain that the TDS happens best in Tally, I still have good number of my own clients and good number of my own staff people who are also comfortable extracting data from Tally, putting into some Excel sheet, and then from Excel sheet to some TDS wizard or some TDS software, clear tags, and then uploading it, and then again while if I have to rectify, then download that file and then put it back into Excel, tally it with Tally, and then do it. But that is not required. That is precisely what is not required, because if the number of returns increase, and if we cannot increase our bandwidth in terms of number of people, because if there are more number of people who can earn more money by trading on national stock exchange, then we'll always have less number of people who will be ready to file TDS returns. I mean, some what should I say, intelligent or non-intelligent people like Amit Vaishampayan only will continue filing TDS returns. Rest of the people, I'm sure, will go to national stock exchange and earn more money rather than wasting their time filing TDS returns. But with that, Amit Vaishampayan probably will have a good time that they will have customers waiting to get their TDS returns filed. If that is the case, then it is very essential that Amit Vaishampayan should get his systems in place, get his records in place. All of us agree that TDS return requires the TDS activities should tally on with your books of accounts. So the first test is that any software that you use for preparation of TDS data, it must match with the accounting data that you have, your books of accounts, which is extremely critical in my view. Uh, so far, there is no negative comments. So I'm assuming I'm going fine. Oh, I'm sorry, Nishant sir. I am from Mumbai, so I keep, I mean, slipping into from English to Hindi and then from maybe Hindi to Marathi. Please stop me if I slip once again. I'll try and remain in English only. I hope that is comfortable with you. So if you're all through with this first screen and whatever little screens I've shared as far as income tax portal is concerned and the NSC portal is concerned, We can now go to the next screen. The biggest advantage with this TDS provisions for us is this provision, which talks about, it is section 40A, subsection A, subsections 1, which says that if if any expenditure where the TDS is required to be deducted, and if the same is not deducted, I mean, if you can see, there are 4 conditions: condition 1, condition 2, condition 3, condition 4, and the default happens if the TDS is not deducted, or deducted but not paid, or not paid before the due date of filing the income tax return. I mean, the latest due date for filing income tax return under normal circumstances is 31st October or so. So if it is not paid before that date, then the entire expenditure shall get disallowed. So this becomes a very critical, very important, and very significant provision for us. So I believe all of you are, I'm sure all of you are aware about this. If not, please become aware, and please, what should I say, teach all your clients that this is an essential thing. And tomorrow, if due to digitization, if department gets these data, then they'll simply disallow all the expenditures that has been debited to your P&L, and on which TDS was required to have been deducted, and you're not deducted. With the kind of digitized information that is available, it is very easy for department at the department level to find out of the number of transactions which are subject to uh, TDS, how many number of transactions are subject to TDS, and on how many number of transactions the TDS is not deducted, or short deducted, or deducted but not paid. And once that information is available, all of us, I'm sure, are aware what type of notices these we are receiving these days today, that this all data mismatch notices that are coming. And once that kind of a data is available, it will be a chaos. And as we are all aware, the unfortunate part of TDS and some of the provisions of TDS is that there is a prosecution, and the prosecution is on the person who is responsible for TDS. Many times is an employee of the company who is responsible for deduction of TDS, payment of TDS, and filing of TDS returns, and issuing of TDS certificates. The issue of the requirement of issue of TDS certificate is still there. It has not yet been done away with. So that becomes a challenge for all those people who are into compliance business, or into business of filing TDS returns. Even of those people who are employees of the company, it becomes inevitable that they have to uh, ensure that the proper expenditure is booked. At the time of booking of an expenditure, the TDS is deducted, the TDS is paid, return is filed, and the certificate has been delivered to the concerned supplier, vendor, or employee for whom the TDS has been deducted. Okay, assuming this particular section is discussed, we'll go to the next slide. The next section, which is another beneficiary for us, is that nowadays, for assuming that uh, all the people are now deducting TDS, another challenge for filing of TDS return is to ensure that the PAN is correct and the PAN is active. And for deciding that, they have put this condition under section 206AB, which says that if the PAN is not active, then you're required to deduct TDS at 20%. Right. So there are many good number of people who have PAN, but the PAN is not active, or they are not filing their returns. So we have to ensure that they have filed their returns, or we have to deduct the TDS instead of at 1%, 2%, 10%, or whatever the percentage prescribed under various sections of Income Tax Act. Instead of that, we got to deduct the TDS at 20%, which is huge. Many times it happens in case of a non-residents. Then in that case, it becomes a flat scene that you got to deduct the TDS at 20% because they do not have the PAN number, right? So this becomes a challenging kind of a stuff. So these are the two draconian provisions from assessee perspective, from client perspective, from the perspective of those people who have to file their returns. But I believe those are very favorable sections from person like Amit Vaishampayan, or any person who's who's in the business of filing TDS returns. So these are all the tools with which you can do marketing, that yes, we are in the business of filing TDS returns, and we shall help you. And please understand that this is your mandated activity, and you must file your TDS returns. You must deduct TDS, you must pay TDS, and you must also file your TDS returns. So this entire activity that happens, advantage is that you have 4 times when you have to file TDS returns, and not only 4 times, it is 2 TDS returns. One is a salary return and one is a non-salary return, right? So let's go to the next slide. Let me just check what is there in the chat.
So no queries as of now.
Okay, no, it's fine. Okay, so two broad categories of TDS. One is TDS on salary and one is other than salary. So let's talk about the first category of TDS on salary. So we do have in Tally, you can do a setup for payroll. Once you have done the setup of payroll, you are in a position to get all those calculations done at the same time. So now this is the company called Future Technologies, where I have done the payroll setup. When you do a payroll setup, typically you get all these options for creation of. You can see this payroll masters. You can click here for show more. Sorry. Now you can see this payroll masters, in which there are about 6-7 uh, configuration setups are there, which is pertaining to income tax. There is something called as income tax pay head details. These are all the configurations that are required for payroll setup. Payroll is a separate set of books where Tally supports you to for generating payroll. Currently, since we are talking about TDS on salary, I am concentrating only on those features of payroll about income tax. So you have income tax pay head details, where you give this pay head details. You have this option. These are the pay heads that you got to create, basic pay, etc., and that has to be linked to an income tax component of that, which is basic salary and the tax calculation. As far as payroll is concerned, the TDS deduction is expected to happen on a projected value. In case of all other softwares, like the software that we use, like Winman or TDK, etc., for computations, the TDS calculation or computation happens on a historical data, on yesterday's value, whereas in case of a payroll, the TDS calculation also happens on a future value, the projected value. Okay, so these are income tax pay head details. These are income tax declarations. So you are allowed to give so many declarations for various purposes of income tax, which are various provisions of income tax. You have income tax exempt provisions. If at all, is there anybody, any employee which is falling into an exempt kind of a provision? You have an income tax amount. You can decide and select an employee and decide his income tax amount. What will be his income tax amount? You can also see a payroll income tax configuration. Right now it is not configured. It is configured only for a few activities, but there are a good number of features of which is pertaining to employer-employee relations and for payroll, which can be configured within the system from income tax perspective. This is from previous employer's TDS deduction, and this is previous employer's income. In case if the employee was working with some previous employment, then what is the total amount of income that he has received from his previous employer? You can record it here, and you can also record the previous employer's TDS deduction. The previous employer, if it has done any TDS deduction and the employee has disclosed that TDS deduction to you as an employer, then you can also account for that particular income tax deduction as far as configuration is concerned. Since our topic today is not payroll, I am not getting in much into the details of this configuration level for payroll, but I'll just run you through as to how the payroll, once it is configured, how it operates, what is required to be done at your end as far as payroll is concerned. Ideally, payroll completely operates online. As we are all aware, there are 4 activities of any books that you have: compile, analyze, summarize, and present. So the 4 activities that we do when we prepare any books. So in case of a payroll, out of the 4 activities, almost all activities are done away with. In case of a normal books of accounts, the last 2 activities, compile, analyze, summarize, and present. The first activity is that of compile, where we create the masters. Second activity is analyze, where we analyze the transactions and do the data entry. The third activity is that of summarization. All our reports, balance sheet, profit and loss account, payroll, payslip, all these are all summarization reports. And the fourth activity is for the presentation. So each books that we prepare it for the purpose of a particular act. And then there is a format in which that data needs to be submitted to a particular authority under that act. So that is called presentation. So out of the four activities that we do for preparation of books of accounts or books of payroll for that matter, the last two activities, that is summarization and presentation, is already done away with. As we are aware, we don't have to prepare our books of accounts even while using Tally. The balance sheet is ready. You don't have to prepare a balance sheet. The theory that we learned, similarly, you don't have to prepare payroll sheets here. Payroll sheet is auto generated. In fact, this third activity, that is of a data entry, analyze, even that is not required to be done in case of vouchers. Since this company does not have any other vouchers, we have to at least give the attendance voucher. So I'll just run you through for the attendance voucher. So you can select attendance voucher. Normally this particular attendance gets captured using any particular so this is how the attendance gets captured. So I'm saying present days and I'm writing 30 days. The second employee, Rajesh Jain, so I'm saying present days and I'm writing 30 days. And that's all what is required to be done as far as attendance is concerned. This attendance automatically gets captured on the basis of whatever attendance softwares that they use. Since my current machine is not connected to any software, this is the only data entry that would be required. Once you are done away with this, suppose we are on 1st of July. And we change the date to 1st of July. And we just say autofill, payroll autofill. We are doing it for salary. We're going for it on the basis of a declared value. As you are aware, from 1st April to 31st December, normally all this is done on the basis of a declared value. Selecting all items, employee name, it is going to salary payable, and it generates the payroll as a voucher. As you have seen, I have not done the data entry. It has generated this complicated activity. And for Rajesh Jain, it has also calculated the income tax of 4,000 rupees, whatever that was applicable, because I have already configured it. I don't have to do the data entry. This is what I was trying to explain when I said out of the four activities, compile, analyze, summarize, and present, the three activities, analyze, summarize, and present, is already done away with. What I need to do is only configure. And very soon, the same thing would be applicable to your books of accounts also and your TDS also. Okay, I'm sure Tally is also working very seriously on this particular issue, and take my words for it, this entire activity of data entry would be done away with. And the current activity that is done multiple times, एक बार टैली में एंट्री करना, फिर एक्सेल में डालो, फिर एक्सेल में से क्लियर टैक्स में या टीडीएस विजार्ड में डालो, फिर वहां से टीडीएस रिटर्न जनरेट करो, even that activity will be done away with. Now assuming this payroll is already been done and we have processed the payroll, similarly we can also process the remaining payroll activities. You just have to say autofill. Okay, you can do it for PF, ESIC, etc. You can see PF calculation, all employees, PF payable, goes here, autofill, payroll. In case if ESIC is there, ESI payable. I doubt whether this ESI would be payable for this. So it is 0. So there's 917 rupees is a value. Okay, so now this payroll is done. Now we need to make a payment. So you can also make a payment voucher. Voucher. go to payment as a voucher, and you say autofill. You can decide what you want to pay salary or you want to do statutory payment. You can say payroll autofill, salary payment, these values, all items. Okay, you can select the payroll ledger. You can also select the bank from which you used to make a payment. You can decide the mode of payment, NEFT or check. And right now I'm not selecting any mode of payment. The payment voucher is generated and you just have to save this particular voucher. This is how it goes, right? This is as far as payment of salary is concerned. Similarly, we can select statutory payments. Now, since we are discussing TDS at this stage, we'll talk about only TDS. It is company, deduct, we'll select all items, resident, Kotak Bank, .com. Sorry, it was here, tax challan, Kotak Bank. This is how the challan gets generated. This is how the payment voucher gets generated. Accept yes. And once this voucher is generated, once this payment voucher is generated, nowadays because it is online, it really does not matter. But those days where this was very essential, we could also see the challan. You can see it here in configuration as print as challan. And once the print as challan is there, you can see a preview and see the challan being generated straight from the system itself, right? So if your configuration is correct, right up to generation of challan and payment, I'm sure all of you must have definitely seen the connection between Tally as a database and many other banks like Kotak Bank, DBS Bank, all those banks where you can directly make payment from Tally to the bank. So you don't have to make separate payment activity as well. The moment you generate a payment voucher in Tally with some few authentications, you can also go and hit your bank account with maker checker mechanism so that you don't have to do multiple multitasking. Only one activity of generation of payment voucher is what is required. That's all what is required to be done, right? So this is as far as payment of TDS is concerned. Let's go to the report part of payroll. So we go to display, we go to payroll reports, and we have multiple reports, right? We do have payslip, which is one of the most favorite report for all the people who wish to have work somewhere as an employee. This is a payslip. This is how the payslip comes. Since the current topic of discussion is TDS, let me keep my focus with TDS. We talk about statutory reports, we talk about Income Tax Act, and this is where you get the computation, where you can see a computation of a person, and you can also see the projected computation for the year 1920. If you remember, we passed a payroll voucher on 1st of July for the month of June, and you can also see the projected salary on a month-wise basis. So you have actuals and projected salaries on a month-to-month basis, and you can see the total as well. So this is how the configuration goes. So this is the computation of any person, and this is the projected computation where they're talking about how much tax has to be deducted. You can see the blue part there on the screen top side, right? The standard feature of drill down of Tally works here as well. So this is how the payroll gets configured. Once it is configured, it works well. Okay, somebody is asking, do we have to take an additional subscription? No, it is there as a part of TallyPrime itself now. Since you are already on TallyPrime, it is It is there as a part of TallyPrime. The feature is very much there. You just need to activate it. Right? And this is post competition. You typically have all this activities that are there of 24Q to be generated. I'm sure we are aware that there's a TDS return for salary. TDS return is called as 24Q, and all the details of 24Q can be auto generated here. There is an option of challan reconciliation, which we'll discuss when we'll go for the other than salary TDS. So normally this salary TDS is not known to people as I feel. I don't know, many a time, most of the places whenever I go, people say ऐसा भी होता है, Delhi में payroll भी होता है, Delhi में payroll का TDS भी होता है, चालान भी generate होता है, and just not, people are just not aware. So I'm sorry if there are people who are chartered accountant or chartered accountant students, but the biggest challenge with chartered accountant fraternity or all the accountant fraternity, in fact, when I send my team for selling Tally, I always tell them किसी भी accountant को ये मत बोलना कि हम Tally आपको सिखा सकते हैं. Tally सब accountant को पैदाइशी आता है. ठीक है, तो किसी को भी ये नहीं बोलना चाहिए कि उसको टैली नहीं आता है. You have to allow him to exhaust his tally knowledge. Once that fellow exhausts his tally knowledge, then only you just show him, sir ये भी feature है, एक बार use करके देखो. If these features are used, I'm sure your time of the accountants would be saved to a quantum extent. What will be required, what is required is that they should start using these features. They should implement payroll. They should start using these features, and maybe एक आध महीना, एक आध क्वार्टर, जब तक आप उससे यूज टू नहीं हो जाओगे, उसको टाइम लगेगा. Yes, discipline is required to be maintained. What is required to be maintained is a discipline, but Tally is probably one of the software which can handle the complication of Indian compliance. मतलब इंडिया में कितने एक्ट्स है और कितने एक्ट्स के compliances है, ये डिसाइड करना पता नहीं. Any chartered accountant is there in audience who can say he knows all the revenue acts in India? I doubt. I don't. I know maybe 2 acts and maybe a part of those acts only. Right? So this is the state of all of us working as accountants. And typically, if you have a entity working pan India, then they have to comply with all the requirements of all the states, and then the company lands up engaging so many consultants. Instead of that, a single accountant is probably in a position to take care of the entire activity. I'm sure all of you are aware payroll is the most sensitive activity of all the activities, and income tax out of which is certainly most sensitive. What is more critical about TDS on salary is that TDS on salary is the last thing that the employee wants to pay. Not that the employer wants to pay TDS, but employer certainly does not want any liability on his head as far as TDS on employment is concerned, because he says कि यार जितना सा TDS deduct करना है कर ले, उसको benefit देने में मेरे मेरे ऊपर liability मत लेके आना. Don't get liability on my head as an employer while making payment for employees. So please ensure that the TDS compliance for employees is done properly, and this is one tool with which you can have control and have your books of accounts, books of payroll, and TDS compliance linked, and most of the reports are readily available. Tally also gives you your ITR1 almost ready in case if at all you have an employee. But now looking at the number of NSC website, I doubt that there will be any employee who is not trading on NSC site. So this ITR1 may not be that useful. I'm sure all your employees would be dealing with some stock exchange, some investment, some trading other than the normal salary activity that they do. So maybe probably next versions Tally will come out with all ITR compliances, and the information will straight away flow from Tally to those ITRs, right? So this is as far as payroll is concerned. Now I would prefer to shift to the other than salary TDS. Any questions so far as TDS on salary is concerned? Dharasha, there is no additional subscription required for payroll. Madam, can we allow Dharasha to speak? I don't.
Yeah, I have unmuted her.
Yeah. Yeah, madam. You have a query? Dhara, madam? Is not there. Dhara, madam, not there. Okay, I think she's not there, madam.
So maybe we can continue. We'll take her query at the end.
Yeah, no issues. So this is as far as TDS from salary is concerned. So let me now shift you to other than TDS, other than salary. So unfortunately, it is assumed by the society whenever it is TDS in Tally, it is only TDS other than salary, and Tally is kind of not capable of handling TDS on salary. That's not the case. Tally is a very good payroll software, and especially for non-complicated payrolls, uh, Tally works very well. Tally also works well with complicated payrolls as well. But अगर payroll complicated होगा और उसको बहुत ज़्यादा flexibility चाहिए तो शायद थोड़ा restriction आ सकता है. But you have to get the payroll implemented. I would advise that at least at once you engage some expert who can help you to set up a payroll, help you to set up income tax setup in for payroll, and show you how the TDS calculation, projected TDS calculation, projected computation happens, and then you can just simply follow that. Your 24Q can almost go online. The fourth quarter of TDS return is normally little complicated because you need to account for a lot of other details which are required for generation of their Form 16 and Form 12A BA. So those are the details additionally required to be given. Anyway, with this, I will end this TDS and salary as a session, and then I'll move on to the normal TDS other than salary session. So for other than salary, TDS other than salary session, basically these are the few activities that are required to be done. One is the enablement of TDS within Tally. Second is deciding the TDS nature of payment, and then creation of TDS ledger, which is a duties and taxes ledger, then the expense ledger, the suppliers ledger, the fixed asset ledger, the stock items, some of the stock items like typically 194Q, etc., where it is required that the TDS is applicable on product purchase as well above a particular value. Then there is something called a challan reconciliation and the triangulation. The triangulation is the one of the best features Tally has ever given. All of you, I'm sure, must have seen it while Punit Bhai or somebody who was giving this sessions at triangulation for GST, because it's one of the best features Tally Prime and prior softwares have given. Yes, Prime is working fantastic. So okay. So this is as far as this is the process of using TDS for other than salary TDS. So let's go to the first step of enabling TDS in Tally. As we are aware, I'm sure all of you are Tally users. So I'm just changing this company from Future Technologies to Comfort Enterprises. Comfort Enterprises is a company where which we're going to use it for TDS. So the first thing that is required to be done once you go to Prime is that you have to tell the system that I wish to use TDS. Okay, by default, all the features may or may not be active. So you can always, first activity is to tell the system that I wish to use TDS. Once you say this, you have to press enter. This is the screen that you will get. Okay, I've given an invalid TAN, so it is giving me a notice that it is an invalid TAN. You can give STD code.
So somebody's asking what version of Tally are you using?
Is this?
Yeah, so the latest one, 4.1.
Right? This is where you can see the version of TallyPrime or Tally for that matter. But I believe once, if you're paying the TSS, then it is advisable to always remain on the latest version only. This is where you give the details of a person responsible for deducting TDS. So you can have all those information for the person who is responsible for deducting TDS to be given. This is a person who is officer in default. So if anything goes wrong with TDS, this person has to go to jail. So you have to be aware when you become this person. Okay. this question which talks about ignore IT exemption limit for TDS deduction. Many times accountants do ask me कि सर मैं कैसे याद रखूंगा किसका कितना पेमेंट हो गया, किसका कितना एग्जाम्पशन हो गया. मेरा बहुत सारे सप्लायर्स है जो अलग अलग कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स पे काम करते रहते हैं और हर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट एग्जाम्पशन लिमिट के ऊपर गया कि नहीं गया, मैं कैसे याद रखूंगा. So this is what I normally tell them, that in that case you just tell this system, if you're going to use Tally and you're going to use Tally as a serious accounting for TDS, then you just say yes to this question, ignore IT exemption limits for TDS deduction. That means on slot for every supplier, for every purchase booking or payment, it will deduct TDS as per the provision of TDS. It will not wait for every contract to have that basic exemption limit of 30,000 rupees or 75,000 rupees, and on slot it will deduct TDS. At times, from operational perspective, if you have good number of transactions and good number of suppliers, and with one single supplier you would likely to have multiple contracts, then it is advisable that you should set this as yes. Ignore yes. Ignore yes means it will not ask for the exemption limits against each of the contract and against each of the supplier every time you're making payment or booking purchase. It will deduct TDS against each single transaction, right? Now, second question is activate TDS on stock items. As all of you are aware, there is a provision called 194Q. Now, 194Q mandates that if you are having a turnover of more than 10 crores with any of the supplier, and a single transaction is more than 50 lakh rupees, then you're required to deduct TDS on that particular transaction. That's where you have to, even if you're buying a product, you're required to deduct TDS. That's the provision of 194Q if the PAN is there. And if the PAN is not there, then the percentage required is 5%. But I doubt 10 करोड़ का ऑलरेडी ट्रांजैक्शन किसके साथ हो गया है और वो 50 लाख का सिंगल इनवॉइस जनरेट कर रहा है और उसके पास पैन नहीं होगा. This is little unlikely unless it's a foreign entity, unless it's an international entity, right? So this is what the place where you have to go and activate this for TDS on stock item, that is on purchase of inventory as well. Okay, and surcharge is very here you are required to go, and this is how the structure would be. Okay, you can select what type of deduct it is. It can be a company non-resident. You can put it as applicable date as of today, and leave the surcharge as says 0%, or you put it as 2% and 1%. Surcharge as 1%. Exemption rate of 50,000 rupees. Whatever is the applicable percentages, you can give here as a surcharge percentages, right? So this is where you configure. This is the configuration of TDS, basic configuration of TDS that is required at a company level. So this is what we are doing, the activation of TDS at a company level. We first told the system that we wish to do TDS, and then we give all the details of the deductor. In this case, this is the Comfort Enterprises is the company who is the deductor, and we are trying to give all the details of this particular entity, right? So I'm just now closing this of the first activity. The first was the enabling TDS. We saw this F12, we saw the person responsible, we saw ignore TDS exemption, and we also saw stock items, right? I'm assuming there is no query. There is one query that they're talking about. No, there is no TDL required. Surya madam, there is no TDL required. This is there as a part of vanilla Tally. No TDL required. Okay, now this is the second stage of Tally, where you are required to go, and once you activate TDS as an activity, what is required to be done is to go and create the nature of payments. Like here, if you can see, this is what will get activated, TDS nature of payments. I have activated these 4 nature of payments. You're going to tell the system against which all provisions are we going to create various TDS nature of payments. So I'm sure all of you know TDS provisions, right? I have a request. Please check whether Tally knows all the provisions or not. I'm sure all of you know all the provisions. Please check whether Tally knows all the provisions. Is there any provision that Tally does not know? Okay, so Tally has almost all the provisions which Tally in its intelligence have understood. If there is any, you can also create that here. Okay, and then go ahead with it. Tally does not stop you. The biggest advantage of Tally is flexibility, and I don't want to say so, but biggest disadvantage of Tally is also flexibility. Friends, we get into any kind of a specialized features of Tally like payroll, TDS, then it is very essential that we must follow discipline, right? So this is where the Tally helps you. You don't have to remember the provisions. You also don't have to remember the section. You don't have to remember the code. You just select that particular provision and it picks up. What it allows you or what it asks you is to give the rate, because we do have this budgets coming twice in a year. Like this year again on 28th, 29th of June, we are likely to have a budget because the newly elected government has come up now, and the previous so-called vote on account that we got on 1st of February was only for a shorter period. So now on 28th of June, again there will be a new budget coming in. If they change it, Tally does not have a mechanism to go to each and every customer's place and change the rate. So that is the reason they have not hard coded it. From software perspective, it is considered as one of the best features that all the things are given to the user for the user to decide what they want. So they have also decided and given you the feature to write the rate. So you can write the rate as per your requirement, and the exemption limit also as per your requirement. Now, typically there are two separate rates that are applicable. One is with PAN and second is without PAN. Right. So one will have to actually go through it and write whichever rates that are applicable. Right. So for the time being, just to demonstrate, we have created these 4-5 types of nature of payments, which on which we have passed the transactions, and we can demonstrate you the first activity after enabling Tally in TDS in Tally. The first activity is this: to create various nature of payments of TDS. Right. This is the second step. Once we have created these nature of payments, like I have created these nature of payments, you also have an option to create so many more nature of payments according to your requirement. Just pray for it that all these requirements will not be applicable to the same company in which you are there, because otherwise your life will be very tough. Normally my observation is that there will be a typically 2 or 3 or 4 type of provisions that are applicable to a company, unless the company is really operating in a very complicated kind of an environment. So this is as far as TDS nature of payment is concerned. Now we talk about the next activity. We saw this particular screen as to how the TDS nature of payment is to be configured. Then it is TDS ledgers. So we have to create TDS ledgers, the ledger where we'll uh, account for the TDS values, right? So we can create these TDS ledgers. Tally does not advocate to create multiple ledgers. You can simply go and create a ledger. I have already created, so I'm just going to alter and showing you those ledgers which I've already created. So I have created these TDS ledgers: TDS on commission, TDS on professional fees, TDS on rent and machinery, TDS on software, TDS under section 194Q, so on and so forth. So if you open any of these ledger, this is how the ledger opens. It's a standard practice of how do you create a ledger. Write the name of the ledger. Tally does not require you to create multiple ledgers. It is just my convenience. Like you, I have also grown up doing manual accounting and having separate ledgers. Tally says even if you create only one single TDS ledger, it is good enough for it to prepare TDS return. But since I have grown up like you doing accounting, I am comfortable saying TDS commission, TDS contractor, TDS professional, TDS rent, so on and so forth. One was the intention to show it to you. Second is the habit. So Tally does not require you to create multiple ledger. It only requires you to create one single ledger as well. Can the payment advice to the supplier show the TDS deduction details henceforth when payments are made? Okay, fine. there are 2-3 things. 90% of the times I advocate, and I expect people also to follow the same, that the TDS should be accounted for at the time of booking of a purchase. So if you are doing passing a journal entry or passing a purchase entry for booking TDS, then the TDS would appear in the purchase transaction, and it will not appear in the payment transaction. But in case if you wish that this should come as a part of payment transaction, then yes, it can always appear. But nevertheless, you can also send a confirmation जहाँ पर आप बिलवाइज डिटेल्स का एक रिपोर्ट भेज सकते हो उसको, जहाँ पर उसको डिटेल्स आ जाएगा कि कितना टीडीएस डिडक्ट किया हुआ है. जो पेमेंट वाउचर बन के जाता है, that will have the details of what was the purchase value and what is the payment value. We'll discuss that once we'll come to that. It's more of an operational issue rather than TDS issue, as I understand. We'll discuss that nevertheless, right? So this is as far as TDS ledger is concerned. I hope so far everything is clear, right? So this is how you create the TDS ledgers. I have created once at the time of creation of these TDS ledgers. It is very essential that here you select the TDS as a type of duty, and here you select the nature of payments. All the nature of payments that you have created will appear here as a drop down list. You can select any, or you can select a specified nature of payment that is there. This becomes little easier for you. Otherwise, at the time of passing of an entry, at the time of passing of an entry, we have to do this, right? Correct. So this is how you create the duties and taxes ledger. I normally prefer to create these ledgers under duties and taxes. Again, Tally has now given a flexibility post GST that you can create these ledgers wherever it is convenient to you, but it is advisable, at least I advocate, that these ledgers should be created under duties and taxes, under current liabilities. Duties and taxes is a subgroup that Tally by default gives you under current liabilities, and these features do work under that. Even if you wish to create these ledgers under any other group, it is allowed, and Tally gives you that comfort, right? So these are all the TDS ledgers that we have created, 1, 2, 3, 4. We can also create multiple type of TDS ledgers in case if you wish to create those many TDS ledgers. Now we're talking about an expense ledger. So how do you create an expense ledger? Either a purchase or an expense for which the TDS would be applicable. So we can have a look at this rent as a ledger. Let's see it in Tally. So let's talk about commission expenses as a ledger. So when you're creating commission expenses as a ledger, it will be under indirect expenses, supposedly, depending on what is the business of the company. You will get this feature called TDS applicable. So you'll have to select here as TDS applicable, yes. Here you have an option of applicable and not applicable. Once you select applicable, it will ask you for the nature of payments. So this particular ledger will be utilized for this particular nature of payment. You can have a situation where one single ledger is there and multiple nature of payments are applicable. You can select any and use the same ledger for multiple applications as well. So this is the second step where we create the expense ledger. Now let's go to the next step of a party ledger, where we are creating a supplier. So let's assume that this is what we are creating, and we are creating this as a party, as a sundry creditor. We are taking a professional chartered accountant service. So this is the name of my party. Again, I'll have this TDS applicable, yes or no. I'll have this type of SSCs under which the particular deductee is falling. Here is the option whether you want to have TDS to be deducted in the same voucher, or you wish to have some additional features. You don't want to have it deducted there. These are all the surcharges to be allowed, exemptions to be allowed, zero value exemption 197 का certificate दिया है. Accordingly, you have to account for it here, right? So maybe there's a party who has given you 197 certificate for low deduction, then you can account for it here. This is what you can account for. and this is where you're required to give the PAN number. If you don't give the PAN number, then at the time of setting up of the nature of payment, whatever is the rate that you've given, there are two separate rates if you remember, one with PAN and one is without PAN. If the PAN number is not given here, then that particular rate shall be applicable. This is the place where at times this Messrs CA Professional, what is named as a name of the supplier, the name on the PAN may be different. It may be Amit Vaishampayan or any other name of an individual. So you can write the name on the PAN, it may be different as compared to the supplier's name. This is how it works many times. The trade name is different and the PAN name is different. The name on the PAN card is different. So accordingly, we can capture it here. So this additional feature is there, though cosmetic, it is essential at times from operational perspective. So this is as far as creation of a supplier is concerned. This is where we create a supplier. Few more things that are required is that in some of the cases, even in case of a purchase of a fixed asset, there is a TDS applicable. So you may have situation like a software or a machine that you're purchasing, and the TDS may still be applicable. In that case, I'll just demonstrate you how to create a fixed asset ledger where the TDS is applicable. Vijay Kumar sir, we are tally experts. We are not income tax experts. Nevertheless, I'll share you the exemption limit chart at the end of the session. Just remind me, I'll share the chart with you. For each type of service, there is an exemption limit provided under various sections, typically section 195 onwards sections, where there is an exemption limit for each type of activity and each type of TDS rate. So it will be wrong on my part just to quote one single exemption limit. For various type of deduction, there are various types of exemption limits are there. I shall share that chart with you, right? I hope that is good enough for you. Madam, just remind me to share that chart with you. Okay, so this is a fixed asset ledger that we're talking about. Here in this particular case, we have created this particular ledger as purchase of software. Suppose you are buying a software like SAP, or just you can imagine the software that NSE must be using for creating a marketplace where 1971 number of transactions have been entered. So you can imagine what kind of a robust software that would be there. So if you look at the balance sheet of National Stock Exchange, probably the biggest asset is the software, which can tackle so many number of transactions within a period of 6 hours and 15 minutes. They have done 1971 crore number of transactions to and fro, complete transactions. So that software becomes a fixed asset for them. So in such cases, this particular ledger becomes a asset ledger for them. You again have this statutory details where you tell the system that yes, against this particular fixed asset ledger, TDS would be applicable, and you mention here as yes, treat TDS as expenditure. You have to consider as yes, and then under which head the TDS will go. You can decide under which head the TDS can go. You are buying a software, so it is getting TDS getting deducted under 194J, whereas the software will work as a fixed asset, whereas the TDS component will work as an expenditure, right? So this is how the configuration can be done. It is your choice. If you say that TDS also should go and become part of my fixed asset, you can treat it accordingly. This is as far as purchase fixed asset ledger is concerned. Second is stock item. So when you're creating a stock item, there can be few stock items, or rather typically in case of 194Q, where you have a customer, where you have a supplier with whom you earlier year you had transaction of more than 10 crores, and the current transaction is more than 50 lakhs. Then in such cases, this 194Q is applicable. In such cases, you do have to create a product, a stock item. So in this case, there is a stock item that we have created. Say this is talking about again a software. So this particular software, we have created numbers, and here you will have this question of TDS. You can configure here. You can say yes and configure this for TDS, and then we'll have the details as to for which type of payment it will be applicable. You have to say yes, This is where you have to set it as yes. So this question will appear there for configuration of a product. So TDS may be applicable in case of expenses, TDS may be applicable for purchase, TDS may be applicable for fixed assets, and TDS may be applicable for stock items. So all in case of all the four categories, TDS may be applicable, and according to your requirement, you have to configure the TDS against all those specified ledgers or stock items whenever you're creating in Tally. So this is where you have to go and say yes, and just say mention that the TDS is applicable here for this particular software. In this case, I've taken it as a software. It can be a stock item as well, right? So now let's go and go back to our. This is basic configuration. Then we're talking about the triangulation. Before that, let's go through the number of transactions, the way the transactions are being recorded. Okay, so these are the number of transactions recorded. I have specifically recorded few transactions as purchase and few transactions as a journal entry, because there's always comes a question as to whether a particular expense or a purchase booking should be passed as a should be recorded as a purchase entry or a journal entry. As far as my view is concerned, I am of the view that a particular activity should be always recorded as a purchase entry, because then there can be a purchase booking, the bill booking process can be followed, and it is advisable to have a purchase entry normally as a purchase entry. Either it can be a purchase expense, or it can be a purchase goods, or it can be a purchase fixed asset. So purchase entry is advisable, but nevertheless I have seen and I am seeing on a daily basis that a good number of accountants and chartered accountants always prefer to pass a journal entry. When we're talking about ERP as a concept, it is avoidable, it is advisable to avoid journal as a type of transaction. Journal as a type of transaction is only transaction which can hit any ledger within chart of accounts, whereas purchase, sale, or any specified type of transaction type are designed to hit only specific type of ledgers. You cannot open a sales ledger, sales voucher in Tally and pass a purchase entry. You cannot open a purchase voucher in Tally and pass a sales entry, so on and so forth. So that becomes an advantage from an auditor's or a control perspective for even a chief financial officer as well. Uh, Pankaj ji, currently we are discussing only TDS. We are not discussing TCS. If time permits, I shall show you the 206 TCS. Nevertheless, 194Q, I shall demonstrate you just now. Okay, so these are the transactions that we have done. I'll just open these transactions for you as a journal entry, which is commonly passed as a journal entry. I normally insist that we should ask for a purchase invoice from a vendor, and we should pass a purchase entry, and normally we should not pass a journal entry, but nevertheless I'm seeing market is using this, and hence I've just recorded few transactions as a journal entry. So when this commission transaction is entered, you do get this TDS on commission as an entry. Let us make an attempt to pass this entry once again for our own understanding purposes as to how it operates in Tally. So when we go to vouchers, and suppose you are passing a journal entry, or let's assume as per my advice now we are passing a purchase entry, and we are passing a purchase entry on 30th of June, and since you're going to pass a purchase entry for commission, we don't need this as an item invoice. What we need is a accounting invoice. So we select this is an accounting invoice, and we pass say Mayur agency, and we are going to pay commission to him. Assume we're going to pay commission of 2 lakh rupees, right? So we have this entry. We can select here as TDS on commission. Okay. So this is how probably this particular party. You can check this. Some mistake has happened at my end, so I'm unable to get this TDS generated automatically. Otherwise, under this related reports, we get this TDS analysis, and it is showing me that voucher has no tax implication analysis. So let's try it out with some other party. Let's talk about professional fees, 2 lakh rupees. Some professional fees. What's wrong? See, there is a is enabled. PAN is invalid. It's one query. Nevertheless, it should calculate TDS and give it to me. Well, just hold on for a minute.
Amit sir, you're on mute.
Yeah, just hold on for a minute. I'm just checking why it is not generating the
Okay,
TDS
okay.
value
Okay.
instantaneously.
So there are chats coming in suggesting how to do that. If you can just check. Amit sir, there is some suggestion in the chat as well if you want to try that.
Let me just check, madam.
Yeah.
Okay. What has gone wrong with that? I have not activated TDS for this particular period for which I was demonstrating. So now once I change the period, it is working, right? So, okay. Giriji, I believe the same problem you also must be having, that the period for which the rates were set up, that period I must have selected. So now since I have changed the date to 1st April 21, it is now calculating this automatically. And it also gives you a related report here called TDS tax analysis, where you can actually see the details of how the tax has been calculated, right? So this is what is the feature of Tally. So we'll pass this entry once again. Let's try it our CA professional. Professional fees 5 lakh rupees. TDS on professional fees. It calculates the value, and it also shows whether the value that has been calculated by the system is correct or not under related reports as tax analysis. Okay, so this is the way the basic feature of TDS operates. Let's talk about the 194Q type of feature, where you have a customer with whom in the previous period you had a transaction of more than 10 crores, and in the current year you are having a transaction of more than 50 lakhs. So we have a voucher and a purchase voucher. In this case, we need to have a inventory voucher, but instead of accounting voucher, we shall select an item invoice. We'll select a party. I've created and named the party specifically as supplier for 194Q. This is a purchase transaction. And assuming we are buying a particular license of 100 quantities of 60,000 rupees each. Let's assume that a SAP license or Navision license or whichever Tally licenses is what we are buying, and this is the only product that we are buying. We can select here as TDS under section 194Q, and this TDS gets calculated even if it is a product invoice, right? So this is how the 194Q operates. 194Q and 194R are basically one of the latest additions to this TDS family as an activity that are there. So this is as far as saving of these particular transactions are concerned. Accept yes. Once these TDS transactions are done, typically the next activity that is there is a triangulation or a challan reconciliation. So when you go to this TDS, you have this period for which I have already configured the data. So let me go back to that period for which you have this statutory reports, you have TDS reports, and you have this 26Q or challans that is there. You can see the challan reconciliation. All the challans that are there, once you make a payment for a TDS, the TDS challan appears except for the challan number and the BSR code. So you are required to give the challan number and the BSR code, because when you make a payment, you are not having the challan number. So this challan number and BSR code is what is required to be given. If you can see it here, this challan number is typed afterwards. When you're passing a payment entry, you will obviously not have challan number. Challan number comes post facto, and the BSR code, etc. If you're already capturing BSR code, that's good enough. The check number, DD number, and the challan number is what is required to be entered. Once the challan number is entered, that's what is the challan reconciliation. Then you have this 26Q, where you'll have all the details. You can see these details of deduction at normal rates, at higher rates, etc. You can also see these details of this is what they call it as a triangulation report. You can see it supplier wise, you can see it category wise. So you can toggle between these two and find out as party wise and category wise. Like any other report, you get the total number of transactions. This is where you get the total number of transactions, the transactions included in the return, transaction not included in the return, and uncertain transactions. So before finalizing any return in Tally, any legal compliance return in Tally, whether it is TDS, TCS, GST, or payroll, you have to ensure that the uncertain transactions are already attended to. Since in this case there are no uncertain transactions, we can very easily go and generate a return. I have also generated a payment. You can, if there is any payment due from here, you can generate a statutory payment. It generates a stat payment voucher from here. Stat payment, TDS, and the voucher would be generated. Right now, the voucher has already been paid. The payment voucher has already been entered. That's the reason you are not having any amount payable here. So long as you have not paid it, the amount payable remains here as amount payable. You can see at the bottom. So my deducted amount and paid amount is matching, and there is zero uncertain transactions. So I can say that now this particular data is ready for filing of a return. So I can simply go to export and go to e-return, generate a return, and once I generate a return, it kind of generates this kind of a file. If you can see this particular file, TDS 26Q, and this file is what is required to be uploaded on the traces site. Just open that traces. Yeah, this is the traces site. I'm sure all of you are aware. You have to just log in here as a deductor and then upload this particular file as a TDS return for that particular quarter, right? So I'm sorry for the trouble in between. I could not demonstrate it properly. Now I think as per this timelines that is there, some 7 minutes are remaining. Any specific questions? I would love to take that.
Yeah, so Mr. Praveen has raised his hand. Mr. Praveen, if you have a query, you can ask.
So you're not audible. Can you be a little louder? Mr. Praveen, you're not audible. Can you be a little louder?
No, I think he has not yet spoken. Anyone has, if any more queries left, you can raise your hands. We can unmute you on mic. Thank you, sir. It was very insightful. Wow. Amit sir, compliments for you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Tara
and
madam.
so I think there are no more queries. We'll wait for 2 more minutes. If somebody, Mr. Kamal has unmuted himself, Mr. Girish. Okay.
Somebody has raised a hand, madam. Two questions.
Yeah, Mr. Ram. Mr. Ram, you can unmute yourself and talk. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Please.
Thank you. Mr. Amit, just to show me once again how that output file has been generated from Tally for
I'll just
TDS trading returns.
Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Tally screen is visible. Yes.
Yeah.
List of folders.
Okay. So this is the gateway of Tally. You have to go to display. You have to go to statutory reports. You have to go to TDS reports. You have to go to form 26Q, and this is normally comes for a quarter because it is designed for a quarter. Now this particular quarter I have already tallied the data. You'll have the number of transactions available here, number of transactions for which TDS return is applicable, and this uncertain transaction should be 0 ideally. So you have an option to drill it down and set the transaction as certain or uncertain, and remove the uncertainty and make it 0. This is the deduction data. We can always verify this particular data either supplier wise or category wise. Once we have done this, we are required to make the payment. So we have to make a statutory payment. Normally these payments are done on monthly basis. At the end of the quarter, only the third quarter that remains. So we can generate a stat payment voucher here. From here we can straight away generate a statutory payment voucher like this. It can be generated. I'm just typing something just for the sake of record. Likewise, the payment voucher you get generated, and you have to just payment voucher. I have already made this payment voucher, so I don't have to do it. Once the payment voucher is entered and the challan reconciliation is done, this payable the bottom amount of balance payable will become 0. So now if you can see, the total deducted amount and total paid amount is matching, 37,000 and 37,000. So the payable amount is 0. Once that is done, we have to go to this key called export, go to e-return and tell the system to generate a SDF file.
No, file format. 1 minute. Sorry, here I have that doubt. File format should be in SDF fixed with. Just go back to that file format if you don't mind, Amit. Now, system will allow to move on the place, or system will not.
It's generating a text file.
It's generating the text file. Okay, got it.
The same text file gets uploaded once it is. If you can, we'll generate it just now. Okay, this is the previous returns number is required to be given. I'm just setting it as no. You can say it is giving you a notice that validate this file using this FUE utility before submitting the data. So it is now creating this tally text file.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, there are two more.
Fine. Thank you.
Where to set basic exemption limit in any section, because for example, to set a party ledger or stock item. If we set it in the nature of transaction, it will take payment wise or stock wise. Okay, this is at a nature of payment, sir. 194Q. Pankaj sir, whatever I have written in chat, it is under 194Q. When you're setting up a nature of payment, I'll just show you what I have done here. You can see it here. This is for that 194Q question. I think it was Pankaj sir. So TDS return is filed on traces or income tax site. Okay, let me just confirm. Kumala madam, just 2 minutes, huh?
Yeah, for sure. Yes, sir.
Girish sir, the TDS return gets filed on traces side, not on income tax side. The ITR gets filed on income tax side. The TDS return gets filed on traces side.
Amit sir, one more small clarification, shall I ask?
Yeah, please go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. Sir, just we would like to understand during your product demonstration, you showcase it. You can book the transaction on journal and as well as the purchase.
Yeah.
Okay. So what actually I just would like to understand, and I would like to understand the consequences also. Suppose what is the advantage and disadvantage if I'm not booking that TDS transaction journal? I'm going to book it on purchase. Okay, on real-time field, some of the auditors is not accepting it. They're making the statement, no, Ram, this is a wrong method. You have to book it, suppose, on the journal.
Okay.
So what's the real difference?
This is again a perception to perception, as I believe, because if your size of the company is big and there are 20 people who are doing data entry, then I'm sure you would not allow all the 20 people, or you will not allow at least 19 people to pass a journal entry. You will allow only one person to pass a journal entry, because if you have 20 people passing 100 entries per day, then you can imagine what will be the volume that you're having. And everybody is, if it is allowed to pass a journal entry, then we'll have a tough time. I mean, I always ask my people that just imagine you're a CFO of a HDFC bank with 800 branches and 10 people in each branch passing entries in your books, and every person is allowed to pass entry into any books, all 800 branches. Then how tough it will be for the CFO of the HDFC bank if the people are allowed to pass a journal entry. Because then all ledgers, each branch having at least 10,000 ledgers, will be open to all the people, and they can pass entries from one ledger to another ledger. And if somebody at the end of the day has to sit and reconcile, and where they have a concept of lot tally, then it is practically impossible, I believe. So I always advise that journal entry should not be passed. If at all journal entry has to be passed, then you have to create a specified journal entry, like a journal entry for depreciation, journal entry for provision for deferred tax, journal entry for income tax, journal entry for bad debt write-off, journal entry for whatever purpose. So you will not have only one single journal entry as a mother entry. That mother entry, I'm sure nobody should pass in any given organization, and there is to be a hierarchy created typically. This is what is my view, but every chartered accountant is right in his or her own perspective, and their opinion should be honored, I believe. I hope your query is answered, sir.
Yes, okay. Thanks, sir.
Because I cannot say those people are wrong and I'm right. I believe this is how it will be. If HDFC allows every single officer and clerk in all their branches to pass journal entries, then you can imagine what kind of a havoc it will create.
Okay, do you mean that then the short form is, if I'm going to book it on the purchase, it is going to help us to do the verification as well as the reconciliation become very easy?
Absolutely. And somewhere you'll have to give in writing what should be the purchase booking mechanism. Because you will not recruit a chartered accountant for doing a purchase booking, right? You may even outsource bills payable. When accounts payable are outsourced, typically, you will only prepare one kind of a checklist, that this is the checklist that they're supposed to follow before they book a purchase. That's the
Got
only
it.
way the cost reduction is carried out.
Got it. Finally, it's not related with this TDS. Just would like to understand my curiosity. Then shall I book any expenses transaction also on the purchase, or it is
Yes,
always
absolutely.
booked on
All
journal?
standard purchases, all standard transaction. I mean, the basic 6-7 transaction that we have: sales as sales, sales return as credit note, purchase as purchase. You may have purchase fixed asset, purchase goods, purchase expenses, purchase overheads, whichever way you want to create separate purchase type of transactions. Purchase return goes as debit note. Then you have typically the contra entry, typically in India. Again, contra is again in India. Worldwide, you have cash deposit, cash withdrawal, cash transfer, bank transfer as a type of transactions, and so on and so forth. So journal entry should be avoided as far as books of accounts are concerned, and especially if you have a composite books, when you're talking about payroll is also there, and compliance books are also there, books of accounts are also there, foreign exchange transactions are also there, and budget transactions are there, scenario transactions are there, and if somebody is allowed to pass a journal entry, it may create an havoc because you have too many attachments attached to it. In fact, you have inventory books as well. So it doesn't work on inventory books. Typically do not operate on double entry system. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, sir.
There is some question from.
So just one is about the multiple TAN for the companies.
Yeah, TCS.
How Yeah. No,
TCS.
नहीं, in the Q&A, sir. Q&A में आप
Multiple
देखिए.
tan. Multiple tan. Let me just check. Sorry, I don't think Tally allows you multiple tan at this stage. At least I'm not aware. I'll still find out. If you can share your number, I'll revert back to you. At this stage, I'm not seeing any feature where I can enter multiple tans here. Hello.
Yeah. Okay.
But you had
And
that question of multiple tan, I believe.
yeah, that's what I'm also
Multiple tan
noting
is
it
not.
down to ask
Multiple tan is
some.
not available at this stage.
Yeah. And which is the reminder for the chart? You said that you'll share some chart.
That chart. Give me some time. I'll share it with you, Komal madam. You can share it with the rest of the
So
people.
yeah, once they send request to support team, we'll give it to.
Yeah. I'll share the chat. I could not read your name. Amarnath Reddy sir.
Amarnath Reddy. Yeah. I will find out details and I'll give.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we have answered all the queries and right on time. 5 more minutes extra for you.
Yeah.
So safe to conclude our session, Amit sir. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
for giving me. Thank you for giving me patient hearing.
Patient hearing se zyada, I think people really wanted this session. They have been asking, video and how interesting the session was.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, sir.